All right. So we're here
Ooh,
recording our very late,
yeah,
our late
yeah.
thoughts.
Hey, but it's okay. You were bedridden and sick, and we missed the opening day, but that's okay. So we'll just roll with it.
I like you
But
say we missed it. Like, like realistically, we're actually going to be there. I don't,
right.
I don't know if missed is the word. I think it's just, hey, we went and saw it when we could.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right because we're adults. We have other things that we had to take care of,
Yeah.
but without much further ado, we are back. Secret Hideout podcast. I am with Jordan Acosta, Sexy Stash. This is Simon Yu. Joshua Roman's not here tonight or here today because he did not watch it yet. Um, oh, I should say we have a very specific subject matter for today. It's a review. We're doing the review of James Gunn's final swan song in the MCU, Guardian of Galaxy Volume 3.
His final swan song.
No, I didn't mean that. I mean, I'm just adding filler. I'm just adding
Oh,
qualifiers to
I
things that I
thought.
shouldn't.
Okay, I thought you were doing a joke there about because he had a swan song with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, after which he was fired.
Oh,
And then they
good
unfired
point.
him really quickly.
That's exactly what I was intended. That's exactly what that was in my mind for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But anyways, today we're going to talk about and review Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Yeah.
And so we got some thoughts and we hopefully can generate more ideas and thoughts as we talk about this, but I'm going to offer it to Jordan. Give us your take. What did you
Yeah.
think about Guardians, the final chapter of the Guardian of the
The
Galaxy
final chapter.
trilogy?
Wow, so epic. Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was good. So good that I don't know that there's really that much value in talking about whether or not it was good. I think everyone
Okay.
seems to like it. I have
Yeah.
yet to read a negative review. We could argue about whether, like, is it good or is it just, like, kind of good or is it really, like, whatever, man. It's a good movie. You should go see it. Um, and I think the more interesting aspects of the movie are, like, just what it means in the context of, like, James Gunn's career and Marvel and the whole Marvel
Okay.
DC situation
Right.
and superhero movies in general, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I thought it was good, and it's a James Gunn movie. I think that's maybe the most important thing. Like when I'm watching this, and I think this was kind of the case with the last two, but man, it's really a pain here. This is a James Gunn movie. This is
Yeah.
not a Marvel MCU movie. This is James Gunn Studios,
Yep.
because he does have his people he works with at this point, right? He's got his
Hmm.
crew both on screen and off, and it's like this feels like a James Gunn production. This feels more like Peacemaker or the
Absolutely.
Suicide Squad than it does like what's was that Ant Man or the
Right.
Marvels or whatever else MCU is producing. And that's something I'd like to dive into later because I think there's a really interesting thing happening there with James Gunn. I also think, I mean, it's a good movie. The whole narrative around like MCU sucks now. Is it, what's going to happen? Like, is superhero fatigue setting in? Because I feel like there's probably like, I don't know, a few thousand people who just like sit in front of a computer all day
Yes.
and they're just always posting that somewhere like, yeah, superhero, it's setting in. I've been telling you for years. It's finally
Right.
like, who,
Right.
maybe it is, maybe who knows, man. It's right. Like they're like, it's gonna be just like westerns. Westerns were popular and then they weren't
Mm.
anymore. But I'm like, I don't know, man. I feel like people do actually still make westerns sometimes. Like it's
Yeah.
things don't just start and stop like that. That's not how reality
Exactly.
works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I do think though that this is not like some return to form for the MCU. This is just a James Gunn movie, and if you like James Gunn movies, you'll like it. And I don't think he's made a bad movie. Like I could
Mm.
sit here and debate like, well, which of his movies are really good, or I don't know if any of them would be in like my 10 favorite movies of all time, but like I don't think he's made a bad movie or TV show for that matter. He's very consistent in terms of the quality. Um, so I also think that this is going to mean nothing in the context of the MCU as a whole. Like,
Right.
I don't think this movie doing well. It seems to be doing pretty well, not as well as I think it probably should be, and I think maybe that's because of the MCU, right? Or I don't know, maybe just the economy or something.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't think the success of this movie would mean anything for the success of like Marvel's or whatever else is coming next.
Sure, that's right.
Because, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, because this felt like a very conclusive film. Mm-hmm. Like not just for the Guardians trilogy. Okay, so that's another thing. There is a Guardians trilogy now. There's 3 movies about these characters in the MCU. And I've been racking my brain over this, and I realized that this has literally never happened in the 10 plus years they've been making these things, right?
Wow, that's yeah.
They have technically you could say that there's a Captain America trilogy, I guess, because they did make 3 Captain America movies, but the third one was really an Avengers movie.
Right.
And it didn't really end his story, and he didn't really get a conclusion until the whole Infinity War thing.
Exactly.
I can't think of any other character or series in this thing where it's like you can just watch this as a complete thing and it works, right? Whereas like, yeah, there's some extra stuff in here. You should probably watch the holiday special, but like this is a conclusion to the Guardians story, right?
Yeah.
The characters all, spoiler, they all survive.
Yes.
They still exist.
Yeah.
We're never going to see this team again, I think it's safe to say, right? Mm-hmm. It sounds like they at the end of the movie, they want to make it very clear. They want us to know, Star-Lord's coming back, so he'll still be around.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, this felt very conclusive, even more conclusive than the ostensibly conclusive Infinity War Endgame, right? Because even that as a conclusion to the first like decade of these things still set up a bunch of stuff for the future. And this movie does not do that.
No.
So yeah, does this feel like the end of like? Do you think this is simply this the end of the Guardian saga, or did it feel like a bigger conclusion than that to you?
Did it feel like a bigger conclusion? I feel that it definitely ends the Guardian saga for sure. You won't see the team anymore. I don't think you will. I was actually really surprised. Oh yeah, by the way, Jordan brought it up. There will be spoilers because it'll be difficult just to talk about it.
I don't care about spoilers, and there's no one here who's going to stop me.
And honestly, and if I just go off a tangent, if spoilers ruined the movie, it probably wasn't a good movie to begin with. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like
come on. How many times have you rewatched?
Your favorite movie,
Memento, or whatever.
Exactly.
Like
it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter anyway. Yeah. So spoilers ahead. I was actually really surprised that Star-Lord is returning. It seems like he's the only character to return, so it kind of brings that MCU Marvelization like shtick into it. It's like, oh no, there's still one that's going to continue on in this greater narrative.
That raises the question, right? When they say he will return, not the Guardians, just him. What does that even mean? Are they going to make a Star-Lord movie? Probably not.
No, I'm thinking he's gonna have a cameo in Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars.
He's gonna show up to I don't know, show the Young Avengers or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. He's gonna give them props and stuff like that. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it ended well. You're right. I think the convenience of it is the setting of it. They're like in the middle of nowhere. Like their freaking place is called nowhere. So there's really no the necessity of having it connected is not there. Mm-hmm. And so you can, and he did have a trilogy on its own 2 feet, on its own merit, and yeah, I think that'll be it. Will I like to see some of them back? Of course I do, but I'm not expecting it, like I said, I was surprised that Star-Lord's coming back, so yeah, there you have it. I do want to say, I don't think this will have any kind of resonance with the other upcoming, I guess, is this a Phase 4 movie or a Phase 5? Do you know?
I don't keep track of it. Does anybody? Right. Does anybody?
Okay. So I'm just going to assume that it was a Phase 4 or, and
this was supposed to come out, originally 2 years ago. So the James Gunn firing thing, right? They hired him back really fast, but he'd already agreed to go make a movie and a TV show for DC. And
right.
So this was supposed to come out in 2021 or something, right? Dude, it's been 6 years since the second one. That's a really long time. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And the first one came out 9 years ago.
Jeez.
I know.
Well, there you go. There you go. Okay. So it had its own kind of decade, kind
Yeah.
of, thing. But all to say, after watching it, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was absolutely refreshing. It reminded me of it reminded me of Iron Man. Just that thrill I had watching it. It was like an old school MCU movie without any of the pretension, without any of the expectation of how will this connect to the next movie? How will this that? How this that? Even though like in the first 10 years I was excited and thrilled about it, I think that's where the superhero fatigue is coming from. You know what I'm saying? That there's that sense of having it to the necessity, the demand to connect it to the other movies in spite of the story, right?
Well, let's be clear. I don't think there's any demand for that. I think maybe a lot of the decisions at Marvel over the last few years have misunderstood, right? That like, oh, it's this ongoing universe and story that people care about. I don't think anyone like I think a lot of it comes down to like, you need characters people care about to tell stories people care about, and the stories need to be satisfying on the level of that character. And then you can add in a bunch of other stuff, and it's kind of like, you're sprinkling some salt, on the dish, but you can't just serve people a big old plate of salt and pepper and seasoning and expect them to enjoy it. It's not a complete meal. And I feel like maybe over the last few years, that's a mistake they've made, is everything has just been one franchise building, connecting thing after another.
Right.
And it's not like a fun novelty thing anymore. Like, this is just what they do now.
It has to be.
Yeah, and you don't care that much about any of these characters, so you don't actually care that they're building a franchise. Like, they introduced a bunch of characters and got people to care about them, and then they made Avengers, right? And one of the things this movie made me realize is like, man, James Gunn did a great job making people care about these characters and getting people invested, more so than any other characters, I think, in the MCU.
Yeah.
And now, he's ended that story, and one or two of them might still show up, but the gang is not getting back together. Yeah.
Right.
And the character focused way he told this story, right, just really reminded me of like, yeah, this is the problem, is like so far, ever since the end of that initial run, right? I mean, who they had Shang-Chi, so they brought him in. They gave him one movie. It's been a few years. They still haven't brought out a second one, so we haven't seen him anywhere, or he hasn't done anything.
Right.
There's been a bunch of shows, and they've introduced a bunch of new characters there. There's been a bunch of like these like kids introduced as sidekicks and stuff and various other things, for Hawkeye or what's her name, America Chavez and Doctor Strange.
Yep.
And we've seen so many of these characters once. And so far, they haven't really done much to build them up. They haven't really centered them. Like I said, Shang-Chi was probably the only one who seems to really have gotten like the star treatment to get like a movie.
Yeah.
Which was well received, but for some reason they didn't prioritize following up on that.
It just petered out. That's exactly right. They had the fire, and then it's just now. Yeah.
We're finally getting, I guess, Marvels, but but that's going to be like, it's going to add like 3 characters, and one of them who got one movie, one of them who was a side character in a TV show, and one of them who got a show for kids, right?
Yep.
And now they're going to put them all in a movie. I'm like, who out there was like just really excited to see this team up? Right? Like, nothing against any of the people involved. It's like, they didn't really do much to build these characters up and get us excited to see this. It doesn't, nothing was leading up to this. It could be good, it could be fun, but like, I doubt it's going to generate the kind of hype that Marvel would want. And also, I mean, what's her name who plays Captain Marvel?
Brie Larson.
Yeah, there's a rumor going around that she might want to step away from the franchise because she's just not enjoying the process. And I can't blame her, because like, look, they gave her one kind of okay movie, and it wasn't that well received, and then they've just had her make cameos and stuff. Like, she's an actor, like, she wants to act, right? Like, what is that? Exactly. If I were in her shoes, I'd be wondering, like, what am I doing? I read a thing. Where did I see this? I think it was it's a YouTube channel. I forget the name, but basically she gave an interview once where she talked about the the way they try to contain spoilers at Marvel, where she would show up for stuff and they give her a script, but it would just be her lines because they didn't want her getting the whole thing. Because then there'd be spoilers in it and that might leak and stuff. And so just imagine though, you're an actor, you show up and they give you a script and it's like just before you get there. So it's not like you even have time to prepare. And it's just your lines, so you can't really practice the whole scene. You're just knowing your lines. Mm-hmm. And then they put you in a funny suit and you stand in front of a green screen. And they're like, talk to this guy right over here. Maybe there's a person there. Maybe it's just a tennis ball on a stick or something.
Yeah. And then the ultimate question is, well, who is this person I'm talking to? Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Just figure
and
it out.
On the day, you got to just make the scene work, I guess, with almost no practice. Like, that's insane. Who would want to do that? Nobody wants to do that.
That's acting, Bree. That's acting. Figure it out. No, that's a good point. I feel that. Yeah, and the consumer is sensing that, and I think that's what I'm saying. That's where the fatigue is coming from. They sense like kind of this bigger kind of production infiltration of it, where it's just like here is just like it's fabulous because the story's there. For goodness sakes, we were invested so much to a raccoon. That's how good it was. Like I was committed to him. I was like, holy crap, this the arc of this character is breaking me. I'm like, this is messed up, and I'm just like,
let's talk about the character. So we set aside the whole Marvel MCU fatigue stuff, and maybe that's really what it is MCU fatigue, right?
Yeah.
Because what they really, honestly, what's funny is what they should have done, instead of trying to just roll forward from the whole Infinity War thing, just let it end and start over with new characters that aren't that connected and just do it again. And maybe that doesn't make sense from a corporate perspective, not exploiting your IP as effectively as you could be, but that's what you do when you tell stories. But if you set all that aside, so in this movie, and again, this is that James Gunn, magic, I guess, where it's like, this is a movie that is really focused on a CG talking cyborg raccoon. Right. And much of the movie is split between these flashbacks, if he's basically, the movie opens with him. That's the very first shot.
Right.
Interesting thing to note. The last two movies, they open with a dance sequence with licensed music. Mm-hmm. Kind of became their trademark. That's what they were all about. This one opens with licensed music, but there's no dancing. It's just Rocket Raccoon. He's sitting there with a Zune, which somehow makes it sadder to me. I don't know why. Just the fact that he's got a Zune and he's listening to Creep by Radiohead, the most undanceable thing they could possibly find. Not only that, it's not the regular version of Creep. I think it's some acoustic version, which is even sadder than the regular version. And then he just walks around looking really depressed, and he's looking at everyone else, and everyone else kind of looks depressed, in one way or another. Nobody seems everything just feels oh man, this is something about this isn't working, and nobody's happy, and Star-Lord's drunk. Literally, he's just shit-faced.
Yeah.
It's the saddest opening to a summer blockbuster I've ever seen in my life. It's so depressing, and they get away with it because that scene is immediately followed by
just rampage through.
Dude, just Adam Warlock busting in and just breaking stuff. And then you follow this emotional arc of he's having these flashbacks while he's in a coma, and he's just basically being tortured in one way or another, in different ways, psychological torture, physical torture. He watches animals burn to death alive in the weird chamber thing that the High Evolutionary has, right?
Right.
And with every scene, it just gets worse. And and here's the worst part. I think the thing that makes those effective, if you've read Watership Down, right?
Oh, gosh.
You feel it's very, the story is super predictable in a lot of ways, but that predictability is what makes it work. Where where this is going, spoilers again, they're all going to die. His friends, his cute little animal friends,
Oh my
They're gonna
gosh.
die. You know what's gonna happen. Every scene, you're just wondering, like, oh my god, like it's
But the
getting.
question is how or when,
Yeah,
right?
like
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
only there's
Yeah.
only there's only like we're halfway through the movie. They can't do more of these. Like it's gonna happen soon, right? Like they're and then it does, and it's horrible and it's depressing.
Yep.
It's exactly what you were fearing the whole time. And then like in parallel with that, you got the story of like the Guardians like trying to find the High Evolutionary to get this thing that they need to be able to save Rocket. And that's also kind of sad because they got Gamora there, but like she doesn't remember anything, and so like Star Lord's all depressed, and again, it's just like they're just dialing up the stress and the sadness the whole time, and it works, and it all builds up to like the emotional climax of the movie is like Peter Quill thinks everyone else is dead, right? And he's on the ship, and there's Rocket, and there's like Gamora 2.0, I guess, and Groot, and he's got the key to like Rocket's like cyborg parts or whatever, so he can finally like put the magical freaking
The what is it? The code, right? It's the
well, there's a code, but then
oh
they,
no no no
they
no
got a
the
medical
yeah, the
device
medical
that can
brace.
kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
heal
yeah.
anything, right?
Yeah, right. It seems like they heal everything through cauterizing a wound, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It's Star
like
Trek
this
magic, basically.
enclosed explosive device that says, "Oh, precisely, we know what to do." So yeah.
And like he's like his heart stops, and like he's giving him chest compressions, and he's screaming, he's crying at the same time, and I'm like, this is Chris Pratt, the guy from Parks and Rec. He's giving like CPR to a cyborg raccoon, a hyper intelligent cyborg raccoon, and over his shoulder is a talking tree boy, right? Right. And watching all of this is a green alien space woman,
Right.
but like it's ridiculous, and yet it was only after the movie ended that I realized, like, man, like that scene was ridiculous, and yet somehow in the moment, like, it just sucks you in, man. It's like you really do care, like you are, because honestly, given the tone of the movie, the fact that it's a third movie, you don't know if he's going to survive. You genuinely don't know. Like you genuinely believe that somebody, at least someone on this team, could die at any moment.
Well,
right,
yeah, like because there was rumors that percolated on the internet, right? Because the fact that it was the final film, and there was already explicit confirmation. Yeah, we won't see. There was explicit confirmation from actors. Right. Yeah, this is my performance with this character. Da 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 da. There was already an expectation
that someone was gonna die.
Exactly. Exactly. And so it's just like, for me, when I was watching this, I was waiting for it. And I was like, oh, it's Rocket. Like, throughout the flashbacks, and it was Rocket. I thought he's gone. I thought it was over.
Really? Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
No, I thought the whole point of this was Rocket was essentially the protagonist, so obviously he was going to survive. I was convinced they were going to kill Quill. Because
okay.
Right?
Okay.
He seemed like he had a death wish. And if anybody, like a culmination of his story would be to do something, to sacrifice himself, right? So this brings me to something about Quill, which is like, and again, I didn't really think about this until after the movie, until today when I was thinking about recording this. It was like, so Chris Pratt, it reminded me also of like this, because remember when Chris Pratt did the first one, he was just the guy from Parks and Rec.
Yeah, right.
And this reminded me of like why he became a star. It was like, oh yeah, like this is a great role and he's very good in it. Like after that, he was getting put in franchises left and right. And a lot of it is just the most milquetoast leading man BS imaginable. I mean, no offense, but your favorite film series, Jurassic World.
Yes. 2022.
Where he just stands there and says generic action guy one-liner stuff and rides around on a motorcycle and looks serious.
Velociraptors.
He what was that thing? The Terminal List. I was looking stuff up earlier.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Did that? Like he's just doing this stuff, but like in this role, it's like, oh, okay, this is a character who, like, yeah, he's kind of a goofy, fun guy. But it's a bit of a facade, and underneath it is just the cynicism, like where he's just he truly believes that like he's got a chip on his shoulder and truly believes that, you know, it's kind of just dog eat dog and he's just going to do whatever
Yeah.
he's got to do to survive
Yeah.
and he doesn't care about the consequences. And this movie really reminds you of that because like when he decides like, oh, Rocket's going to die, he's going to do anything to save him. Like there's this scene where they find the High Evolutionary finally, and he gets into. I mean, we don't have time to talk about it here, but he gets into like a 1980 something Ford Fiesta.
Yeah, yeah.
But he hands Groot all these guns.
Yeah,
and Groot like hides them in his body, right? Because he's tree, he can sort of like move his roots around. And it didn't occur to me afterwards, but like that scene where they go in and they end up having a shootout and they jump out a window, that was literally the plan all along. Like he literally went into that room, like stone cold.
Try it or die trying.
Yeah, exactly. Looked at all those people. The plan was to kill every single person in that room from the very beginning. That wasn't like, oh, we got to shoot our way out because like that was literally the plan. The whole time. He was going to kill everybody there.
Wow.
So that he could get the chip out of that guy's head. And then he grabs that guy and he's talking to this guy the whole time. He's looking this dude in the eyes as he kills him. Like that was again the plan the whole time. He's like, no, don't remember he doesn't shoot him when he shoots everybody else. And the guy thanks him and he thinks that he's sparing his life. No. Then he grabs him and jumps out the window, right?
Right.
And kills him by landing on him like a freaking airplane landing gear, dragging him across. It's pretty messed up, actually, like just how brutal he is in that scene. Earlier in the movie, he emotionally manipulates that one worker. And again, I get it. They're all going to die if he doesn't do something. He's got to get him out. But like, dude, he like, as soon as he gets what he wants from him, he just shuts that charm off. And that was like cold, dude. That was like, how manipulative do you have to be to do something like that to a person? And it you know what it is? It's James Gunn knows how to weaponize Chris Pratt's charm, where he's like, oh, this is a charming, fun guy. So with this character, what he can do is he can use that as like a tool, as a weapon, right? Mm-hmm. And it creates a sense of depth in the character that you don't see in the other roles that Chris Pratt plays.
Yeah.
I don't know what you thought about that, but I'm like, Chris Pratt seemed like he was better in this than he's been in anything in a long time.
So I want to bring this up. Okay, so I think this is a good time to transition into James Gunn and the skill and the craftsmanship that he has in endeavoring in doing a high production, like big budget blockbuster film, but make it you know what I'm saying? Like we talked about it after the movie, just like, I mean, there was many others who were just as talented and just as skilled as directors, but they didn't deliver, or they haven't delivered as well as James Gunn. There's something unique about James Gunn, and what he can bring out of a character, you know what I'm saying? And we saw this, I think that not only Chris Pratt, right, but Dave Bautista. I think what really catalyzed Bautista's career is, like, seriously, James Gunn seeing something in this man and saying, hey, you're more than just muscle. You're more than just the brute character. You have depth here, you know? And
he found a way to like use his natural skills while also turning his, you know, because like, you know, when he started, that was like his first major acting role, right?
Exactly.
It's not like he had a lot of experience, but he used that inexperience as an advantage for that character. Yep.
Yeah, and like, I mean, well, and let's just focus on this movie alone. This was so moving for me. Like he's not Drax the Destroyer. So we see this character just evolve in this trilogy, right? Where he lost his family in the beginning, and he has this vendetta and this revenge against, I forgot the first villain in the Guardians of the Galaxy. No, it wasn't Thanos.
I thought it was Thanos who killed Drax's family. Or that might be in the comics. Might be in the comics.
Okay. It was whatever it may be.
You're thinking of Ronin from the
that's who I thought. But exactly. So it might have been, I might have got him mixed up. But anyways, lost his family, and he's identified as the Destroyer. He just tears down, wreaks havoc, and all this and that. And then we see here he's not the destroyer. And like I think it was Nebula that said, "You're not a destroyer. You're not the destroyer. You're actually a father." And I was just like, and then how he communicates to the kid is just like, this is it. This is phenomenal. This is what James Gunn could do. This is what he brings out in people that people underestimate, thinking that, oh, all you are is just muscle. All you are is just a lughead. All you A, B, and C. No, you actually can get something out of him. And now he's become an actor, Bautista specifically, he's become an actor that people want because of that paradoxical dynamic that he can have now. And just so let's talk about this. Let's talk about James Gunn's just this quality, this ability to bring out the best in everything.
So this leads to my main takeaway. This is the thing that was on top of my mind after we walked out of the movie. Because I was thinking, all right, so James Gunn's oeuvre, right? He made he directed one movie. I think it was Super before Guardians, as far as I know. I'd have to look up to see. But he's written a bunch of stuff. He's written scripts for things. But that was like the only thing he's actually directed, which was a sort of ironic superhero parody movie, right?
Okay.
And then he made this, and then he made Guardians. Then he made Guardians 1, then he made Guardians 2. And then he got fired. And then he made the Suicide Squad, and then he made Peacemaker. And then he went back to Marvel. He made the holiday special. He made this. Now he's going to go over and make Superman, right? So this guy's oeuvre is like 90% like big franchise films.
Right.
And that's interesting to me. Because a lot of the directors Marvel gets, like they find these people who are kind of already established as like at least as indie directors. So you think your Taika Waititi's and right like these, and they've already got kind of a style that is kind of theirs and distinct. And what Marvel wants is for them to sort of come in and sort of apply that style to a character, right? And then like so they can sort of get that aesthetic and give them something kind of like unique, right? But they've already got the character and they've already got kind of in many cases, they've already got like pre-production going on big action scenes and stuff. But then, that director goes off and then goes back to their normal career of making like indie films or whatever.
Right.
And that's interesting to me. So there's a word that we use to describe those kinds of directors, right? And it's auteurs, right? Like these, and this is, your director has a very distinctive aesthetic, and they have certain themes and preoccupations that kind of like you see throughout their work, and potentially certain people they always like to work with, right? And it's not just the MCU. This has been the case for decades when it comes to superhero movies, is you'll get Tim Burton, right? Or Christopher Nolan, right? Sam Raimi with Spider-Man, right?
Yes.
Where you got these directors who like they'd already established a sort of career and an aesthetic and a whole thing for themselves. Then they step in and maybe they direct, some of these movies. They might go up to 3. And then they go back to their normal career, right? James Gunn has not done that. Like, this is his normal career. And, I mean, he got his start in Troma Films. And so it does make me wonder if, like, given his background as somebody who, like, loved comic books and, like, genre stuff, and then went to Troma. And this, in a lot of ways, this feels like if you just gave Troma $250 million, this is the movie you'd get. Like, because there's an entire space station that's made of like biological technology, and it's just like it's skin and eyeballs.
Yep.
And like
flesh.
I'm pretty sure there's a big fountain that's technically urine. It's like yellow water. They don't say it.
That or bile, one or the other. Yeah.
This does not. I would not call it a horror movie, but there's parts of this that really do edge into horror territory, right?
Right.
Or maybe I should say Gunn is an expert in the usage of genre. And in this movie, he pulls out horror when he needs it. He pulls out action when he needs it. He pulls out sci-fi when he needs it to do what he wants to do. And I wonder if like his background means that to him, genre is not like something that he'll do every now and then, but it's literally how he thinks about art, right? Like this guy, I guess the question to ask you, Simon, is and the internet, if people want to comment on this, would you consider James Gunn an auteur?
So, before I tend to assume a lot. I tend to presume what I think words mean. Could you provide, not for my sake only, but for the sake of our audience, how would you define auteur?
I mean, what I just described, like, an artist who, Okay, in this case, I guess we'll just say a director, because let's just focus on movies.
Okay.
A director who has a very distinct vision, right? And their movies all kind of hang together, like just like a Tarantino, right? Like all of his movies kind of, you can tell. You know when you're watching a Nolan film, a Tarantino film, a Taika Waititi film. I think Rian Johnson with the Knives Out movies has kind of stepped into that space as well.
His Poker Face,
They usually write, direct, produce their movies from beginning to end, right? They're not just there to direct someone else's thing. That's their art.
Right.
Scorsese probably falls into this as well, right? Like some of the more older directors. And often they are kind of their own little production crew because, like I said, they will have certain people they work with
just
on everything. Composers, actors, right? Sometimes like producers, cast, and so there's like a consistency. And often people are fans of even if they're not fans of movies, there are a lot of people who are fans of this or that director because of the aesthetic or whatever. Like a lot of people
like a Spielberg back in the day, right?
Yeah. Man, I don't know if Spielberg an auteur. He can. Okay, you know what? This is a whole other discussion, but Spielberg is no. I'm gonna. This is a serious statement. I think Spielberg is the greatest director of all time. And I think Spielberg genuinely counts as a genius and kind of supersedes the whole classification of auteurs. That's a whole other discussion that we have to have sometime. But he's an exception to all of those rules. He's like Shakespeare or something. Like those people don't.
Wow.
They.
All right.
Is that really that controversial? I mean, he's freaking Spielberg.
No. I just Jordan. Let me just say to the audience, Jordan doesn't really convey superlatives here. You know what I'm saying? So to have him say something like this is not a shocker.
If that's what you're, yes, I do mean that. I'm not just saying that for a fact. I actually
exactly. No.
And to be clear, when I say I mean that, Spielberg's not like my favorite director. I don't know if he'd even be in my top 10 favorite directors, but objectively, I think he is actually the best director who's ever lived, right? But that's for technical reasons. But anyway.
Right. Okay, so go back. Okay,
so an auteur is one of those people. So the reason I ask is I feel like James Gunn checks all of those boxes.
I think so too. I feel that
with the weird exception that he doesn't really make his own separate stuff. Like it's all been studio work. It's all been genre in franchise.
Exactly. That's what makes him unique, right? That's what takes him on another level aside from the Nolans or the Scorseses or whatnot. It's almost as if whatever it may be, whether his heart's in it because he just loves comic books or loves this or that. It's just, but he takes it, he makes it his own, and then he presents it with a nice ribbon tied around it, kind of thing. You're right. And let me also add to this auteur definition. He's also been emulated. You know what I'm saying? Like we for goodness sake, like every MCU trailer that I see now, there's always going to be like the music back from the 60s or 70s. They'll just pick this obscure thing to comment on what the trailer is going to be. Where did that come from? It came from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. That's where it came from. He's been imitated. You're absolutely right. When you see something of his, you recognize it right away. So I'm gonna have to agree with, based off your definition and my understanding, I do agree. I think he is an auteur in a very unique sense, where he made these big production IPs his own, and he ran with it, and he ran with it hard and in a very phenomenal way. So I
guess the one thing I would add to that is when we say he made it his own, I wonder if that's even really what's happening here, right? So this is a weird thing in the current landscape of media where like we still have this like hangover from the 70s where like good art means being original and art is about self-expression.
I see.
That has typically not been the case, or at least that's not the way people traditionally think about art. And if you go back to like pre-modern stuff, especially, so like Middle Ages and further back, almost all art is repetition, or all art is people fashioning new narratives out of existing stories, right? So like, Civilization of Ancient Greece, storytelling was almost entirely, in the context of Greek mythology and traditional narratives, right, about Greek civilization. And to some extent, that's been true of almost every civilization, right, up until modernity. And what I'm wondering is if, like, is James Gunn standing apart by, he's not trying to be original. I mean, you could say he is. Clearly there is a distinct, like when you're watching James Gunn movies or shows now, it is pretty clear, I think, when it's him, right? Like there is a distinct style that is him. But he didn't develop that by stepping outside of and away from things. He developed that by diving ever deeper into the traditional stuff. Well, the stuff that's traditional to him, which is superheroes. In other words, he's treating comic books and the superhero genre the same way that, Homer treated Greek mythology.
Okay.
Well, I think it's important because as much as people give lip service to the idea of comics as modern myth, right? I feel like I hear that all the time.
Yeah, sure. Just to legitimize it.
Yeah.
So you could get a BA degree.
Important, yeah.
Yeah.
Most people don't actually treat them that way.
Right.
And
right.
I think clearly based on like the body of work he has now, I think you can see some glimmering of like, I think he does understand that, at least at some intuitive level, that like the reason the stories work is because he understands the themes behind the characters, right? Just like if you read the Odyssey, right? There's a reason that Odysseus is essentially in conflict with Poseidon as the god of the sea, right? It wouldn't make sense for Odysseus to be in conflict with Zeus because he doesn't need to take an airplane home. He needs to take a boat home, right? And
exactly.
I think on some level, Gunn understands like, all right, well, with the Guardians, like what's the theme here? And a lot of it is like recovery from trauma, right? Found family, stuff like that, because that's what these characters are.
Sure.
I'm curious to see if with Superman, he can find the themes there. Or, like, in other words, he's not just going to repeat the same stuff he's been doing with, like, the Guardians, but, like, and Suicide Squad, which are very similar. But, like, he understands, like, this is a different type of character with a different ethos and different underlying themes.
Yeah.
And then can create something just as, evocative of that character as these movies have been for their characters, right? I that's what I'm saying. I think, yes, you could say he's made it his own, but I think it'd be more accurate to say that, like, this was already his own. This is what this is his thing. He likes comic books and he likes superheroes and he likes genre. This was already who he was. And so in effect, he has the opportunity now to play with the best toys, right? Like he could go and try to make his own stuff, but no, that's not what he wants.
Right.
He wants to work with the best material. And that's Marvel and now DC.
DC, right. That's good. I think I think you're spot on. I was reminded of when we were commenting on it, it's just like him digging deeper into it and not perhaps making it his own, but I see his work as like a Zack Snyder in regards to the action, but better. I see the snarkiness or the kind of like that snarky conversations that people had. Like I remember when they go into Organa, I think that was the name. The Flesh Company. Yeah. And like Nathan Fillion does a cameo guest star appearance, and he's like the head.
Is that even a cameo? I mean, it's a pretty meaty role for that.
Yeah. Sequence. Yes. Right. Yeah. And he's the head of security in this Flesh suit, right? And like he acts like this beat cop, right? And he just has these weird conversations like, oh yeah, no, I have one of those. He annoys the crap out of me. They said that. Like that snarky kind of commentary or that like the interaction between characters. It reminded me a lot of like Joss Whedon's stuff, but better. Like Zack's like you saw the best of Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon, and James Gunn just did it much better.
You heard it here first, folks. James Gunn is better than Joss Whedon at being Joss Whedon. He's better than Zack Snyder at being Zack Snyder. He beats them all at their own games.
Yeah, I think he's figured something out. I really liked what you said too about like because you kind of get that sense in Suicide Squad and Peacemaker when he directed those that sense of these characters are coming from trauma and the found family theme. Yeah. I think he really nails that. I think that is his thing, and he goes deep into it. And it's provocative because it's not provocative, but it's magnetizing. It's something that we can all connect with because all of us could have maybe an ounce of trauma and really realize, I can connect with this character.
Right.
There's this sense of interaction there between the consumer and the movie, and it would be interesting to see if this is his thing. It would be interesting to see, to apply that. It could definitely apply to Superman, and I'm excited to see what he could do with that. You know,
that's an interesting point. So something else I was mulling over that I've been finding hard to put into words is, what is this movie really about?
Superman or Guardian of the Galaxy?
Guardians.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna mull over it hasn't even come out yet. Come on, I'm not. I'm not that smart.
We can speculate.
I'm just gonna look ahead into the future.
Yeah.
But no, I think that you're right. I do think that the core theme, there is a core theme that I think you can sense throughout his over. So this is where I was kind of like coming from with the whole auteur thing, right? Which is like, if he is an auteur, then what is he about, right? Because it's easy to look at like Christopher Nolan's movies and see a lot of similarities. Obsession, right? Is probably the big one. I mean, most of his movies you could probably describe as a man obsessed with the death of his wife is driven to ever increasingly self-destructive acts. That's like 6 or something of his movies, right? They're all like that.
Right.
So like you can see certain themes in what is like Gunn's whole thing. And yeah, I think like trauma, found family is clearly a thing in everything he's done so far.
Right.
It wouldn't surprise me to see those recur. But if there's one thing that really comes to the fore, I think it would be empathy, right? So in the Guardians movies, it's there.
Yep.
I think it's really there in this third one, which is this like because of the villain. So we haven't really talked about the villain.
Yes, right. We got to talk about him.
I think is best described as a tyrannical community theater director. Just on a cosmic scale. Like that's what this guy is.
Right.
He is just this ridiculous, over-the-top perfectionist who blames everyone else for things not working.
Right.
And insists that everything be the way he wants it to be. I almost imagine him sometimes holding like a script in one hand and putting it on his arm as he gestures at people.
Yep.
Right. And he's not. This is interesting. He's not like a sympathetic or empathetic villain. He's not like, and they don't spend. I mean, Thanos got a whole movie to humanize him before they did Endgame, right?
That's right.
They don't do that with this guy. We don't really know anything about him. We don't get much of a backstory or anything, right?
Yeah, whether he's human or what. Yeah.
We just know what he wants to do.
Yep.
And we see what he does to Rocket and his friends, right? And we see him just cruelly and we see him blow up literally an entire planet of his own creations, of his own people, because he decided it just wasn't working out.
Just because people were just selling drugs.
Because someone was dealing drugs in an alleyway.
Just could not work out. Yep.
And he's a monster, right?
Yeah.
And
yes.
And he is maybe the best acted monster I've seen on screen in a long time. Like the guy is, what was the guy? Chakudi is, I think, is his last name. He was in Peacemaker.
Yep.
He was good in that. He is great in this.
Great in that. Yeah.
And the core issue with this guy, because what does he want to do? He wants to create a perfect world, which on the face of it is not like a bad thing. The core issue with this guy is his lack of empathy.
Yep.
Right? He just doesn't feel anything for other beings. And so it's easy for him to just treat people like objects because everything to him is just objects, right? He has zero capability. He's a sociopath, right? And the thing that makes like the Guardians work is learning to empathize with other people's experiences and emotions. And so like in this movie, it really comes to the fore, but I think you can see it in everything he's done, even like Peacemaker, right? Because Peacemaker is literally all about feeling sorry for Peacemaker, the guy who killed our favorite character in the Suicide Squad. And apparently that guy's father is going to try to kill Peacemaker in Peacemaker season 2. So like, again, like sympathy for the devil kind of thing, like understanding, how he's still a human being, right? And why, how did he end up the way he is? So like, I do think empathy is probably the through line through a lot of this, right? What makes the Guardians good guys isn't so much that they're better than anyone else, really, but they learn to feel. And at the very end of this movie, this is really driven home. when now Rocket is the leader of the Guardians, right? And they're on this like planet with some villagers, and the villagers are about to be attacked by a horde of like alien monsters. And there's this like moment where like so I guess one of these new Guardian members is like it's Groot, and then like Mohawk guy.
It's what's his name in it? It's James Gunn's
Yeah,
brother. Sean,
and one
Sean
of the
Gunn,
new
yeah.
members asked him like, "Do you
Right.
ever feel sorry for them, right? These creatures?" And he's like, "Yeah, but like these villagers, like they can't protect themselves." Right? I thought it was interesting to end on that note. Like that was a weirdly reflective thing to say. Like this wasn't a big triumphant ending, right?
Right.
It's clear like there's this sense of like they feel for the villagers, they're going to protect them, but also they feel kind of bad about like the harm they have to do to the things attacking the villagers
In order to protect the village, right? Yeah.
It does give me a lot of hope for Superman, because literally empathy is what that is the core theme of Superman as a character.
That's right. That's right.
That's literally what this is why I wasn't a big fan of like the Zack Snyder movies, because I don't think Snyder really got that. But literally that is Superman. That is his core ethos.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that I've just been. It was hard for me to put into words, but I was like, there's something there, and if that continues, that works. That works for the superhero genre, right?
Yes, I think you're right. I think that's why I think there was this aspect of. I think you nailed it. It's obvious, right, after you say it, but like you nailed it, because you do see that in all the good MCU movies. You know what I'm saying? Like for goodness sake, what compels Tony Stark in the first movie to just like, I'm going to give up weapons building. I'm going to give up the arms race. And why? Because I saw one of my own technology actually kill someone that took care of me and sacrifice his life for me, you know, kind of thing. And you just see that theme throughout. And you know what? I love the fact, since you mention it, just seeing it now in that way, I love the fact how even the own team struggled with it. Remember when Nebula like just started just saying like to Drax, you're just you're so stupid this, so stupid that, and then like Mantis is like, oh, you don't get it, you're so dumb, and it's just like, it doesn't matter, I don't care if he's stupid. And it's just like, and then Drax says, I don't know if I should.
I don't think I care for this defense. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But like the idea is, empathy is hard, but you need these little arguments to actually course correct to go to become empathetic. And I think that's something that made it really actually very real, because like in the first iterations of these heroes, like Iron Man, Captain America, especially Captain America, it's just almost as if he was just like, he had no struggle with empathizing. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Captain America is the same character as Superman, right?
Exactly.
He's modulated down a step, but he's the same. Again, that's his core ethos. He sees a bully beating somebody up, he's going to stop him, right?
And I can do this all day.
Yeah,
you know, exactly. Here, you have these absolutely tragic hurt, traumatized people trying to empathize, right? And that's the beauty of this film. That like you see them struggle with it. Especially Nebula, who like, she talks about how she was tortured by her dad, you know, like her black eyes and all this, and like, but like she's the one that is so invested in saving Rocket in her own way. And then when she finds out that Rocket's alive, she takes a moment to break down, and she's humanized at that moment as like, oh shoot, this like,
that whole scene in that, I guess the child prison that the High Evolutionary has created. He created a bunch of children and then put them in prison.
Right.
And yeah, that whole scene was super interesting because it was entertaining, but also you're right, it does sort of surface a lot of what the movie is about. Because like, so in the beginning of the movie, you do get the sense like nobody's happy, right? And it's very vague. There's no real specific reason, just the sense of like wistfulness and like lack of rootedness, right? Where like they're all kind of going through the motions, but they don't even really know why anymore, right? Yeah. And that is the scene where like, I guess Mantis' whole justification for like why does she like Drax so much? Because like he's the only member of the team who doesn't hate himself.
You're right.
That is kind of the core thing, though, isn't it? Like that. So, in setting aside like empathy as like a general theme of superheroes and the kind of theme you build something like Superman around, like the Guardians, what makes them maybe a little bit unique is they struggle to empathize because in order to empathize with someone else, first you have to like not hate yourself. Like
Right,
you
right.
can't empathize with other people if you hate yourself. And all these
Yeah, yeah.
characters kind of hate themselves for one reason or another. Usually, actually, you know what? All these characters lost their families in some traumatic way
Yep.
through
Yep.
some sort of horrible experience,
Yep.
right? And that has left them with a ingrained sort of like internalized hatred of themselves
Right.
as a product of that family, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And so they need to get over that if they're ever going to like be the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like they can't help other people if they can't help themselves, right? Yeah. That is really interesting because that it's a funny line, and again, it's one of those things where like it's funny in the moment, you know, like this whole conversation and Drax doing his little dance for the kids. None of this really occurred to me until just now because it's a movie where there's so much happening,
Exactly.
but there's a
Exactly.
lot there if you really want to go back and revisit it, you know.
Yeah, and you know what it is? It's like I heard a lot of any of the criticisms that I did hear on the YouTube and stuff like that. The A lot of people say, well, James Gunn shifts
Yeah.
the aura, so it's
The
like
tone
hecka serious.
does,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then out of nowhere, he just wants to cut a joke. And I was just like, hey, there's a lot of people who do that and do not do that well. But James Gunn does it in a way that it reminds me a lot like um it reminds me a lot of like Korean movies, like Train to Busan, The
Yeah.
Host, Parasite. It's not an uncommon way to tell a story, to have like this stark 180 shift of emotion, and if it's done well, it'll do what we're doing right now. We're talking about it, and
Yeah.
we're breaking it down, and we're realizing, oh no, this is actually something,
That's
So
super interesting. Yeah, I've heard some reviews that mention that where it's like, oh, it's tonally inconsistent.
right, but
And I remember listening and like it's funny because I didn't agree with them and yet I couldn't disagree. Like they're right. It is
yeah,
totally
right,
inconsistent.
right,
But you're right. Now I'm thinking of stuff like Old Boy,
yeah,
all these Korean movies where they do leverage really jarring tonal shifts.
yep, yep,
And usually, I mean, it can have different effects, but I think usually it's like the attempt to sort of like snap you out of a certain expectation.
exactly,
Yeah, or to
exactly.
create a
Yep,
sense of like, God, what's the term I'm looking for? In Old Boy, at least, I think it's used to create a sense of absurdity, right? Where like something horribly violent happens directly contrasted with something like that's the opposite
right,
of that. And you'll be shown something that combines like, you know, a sense of like horror and a sense of tenderness at the same time.
right,
Yeah,
right. And
that's
I
interesting.
yeah, exactly. And so I mean, I can't nail it, but it's not. If you see film, if you see, I mean, we've all seen film outside of the U.S., right? So it's just
Yeah,
like it happens. Like I'm reminded of, there's a scene in The Host. Um, I think it's The Host, but basically it's the fish monster that terrorizes this
yeah.
port city in Korea, right? And like the family thinks that their daughter's dead, right? And so they have a wake for her, and like the city's everyone's in mourning. The family comes, she's like the Olympic archer, all this and that, and they just break down crying, and they're just convulsing on the floor, and they're moving around, and it's hilarious to me, as it's like
Right.
I'm breaking down in tears, but I'm laughing my head off. And I was just like, what is going on here? But what it does, it pulls your attention into something else, because at that moment they're motivated to do something. They're motivated to say, no, she's still alive. We have to save her. We got to figure this out. And it's
Right.
just like, if it kept on with the morning, I don't know if I would have that kind of effect to direct my attention back to it. I don't know if this is the actual reason for doing this inconsistent thing,
Right.
but it's
Well,
it's effective. It's effective, and I don't think there should be any criticism for
yeah.
James Gunn doing it. You
I
know,
mean,
so
I mean, obviously, I think it's safe to say. I think you can It's 100% certainty. James Gunn has seen all of these movies and is probably a
Right.
fan of, yeah, like most directors who we would consider auteurs, right? He probably likes this kind of stuff. What
Sure.
you're describing is probably, and is also very in line with, so again, if you haven't seen Super, it's a black comedy. In other
Okay.
words, it's
Okay.
horrible. The ending is rough. But it's also meant to be very, very funny, and it does exactly, like, it combines really jarring, like tonally jarring things together, right, in the same scene. And I suspect that, yeah, this is something that maybe he picked it up,
Yeah.
from watching these kinds of international films.
Right.
And yeah, that's a good point. And it really makes me wish that, yeah, like I could read Korean and I could see what maybe Korean film critics thought of this, and whether that was something that bothered them, or if there are other
Right.
things that are conventional to American cinema that they think are dumb.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. There
Yeah.
you go. So yeah. And I just before we transition, I think the actor's name is Chikwudi Iwuji, who was
Okay.
the High Evolutionary. I really like the fact that he wasn't sympathizing with the devil villain. I think that there's times I feel that it's not overrated, but I think it's just overdone that you have to sympathize with the villain. You know what I'm saying? And like sometimes you just need a really crazy, maniacal, mad scientist monster.
Well,
Or how did you describe him? Like he's the community.
A tyrannical community theater director.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You just need that to just drive the character. And all to say, so all the details that we talked about thus far,
Right.
after I finished watching the movie, I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is a glaring mirror of critique for the MCU. You know, we won't see there won't be any tonal shift in the next coming movies because I know that they're already done in production and stuff like that. But this is the pinnacle of what could have been for other movies. Like this is what Quantum Mania should have been. This is what all these other Phase 4 movies should have been. And they just pale in comparison to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We'll never see another Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't think. Or we'll never see a James Gunn directed Guardians of the Galaxy ever. You know what I'm saying? But it's just like, but what this has done is the villain was so much better than. Now, granted, and you anyone who's listening to this or watching this can call me a fool. I still have not watched Quantum Mania because I choose not to watch Quantum Mania. You know what I'm saying? But like from everything that I've heard, it's just like what they did to Kang the Conqueror, the baddie for the next cycle. The High Evolutionary, from what I'm hearing, is a million times better than what they've done with Kang the Conqueror. You know what I'm saying?
I gotta say, yeah, I'm a little disappointed that he dies, or apparently dies. I mean, his ship blows up, so he dies.
Right,
but it is
right.
comic books. I mean, he could have
Right.
escaped or whatever. But I'm a
Sure.
little, because I'm like, yeah, I'd watch this guy. Like,
Exactly.
he's like, because he is like, he's a psychopath. Maybe it would get old, but I'm like, he does, like, he just leaves such an impression, both visually with his. And again, I can't believe they did this in an MCU movie. Let's talk. Okay, and let's maybe mention this before we wrap this up. But yeah, this is, it's not R-rated, but like this is the closest. Maybe that, what was the werewolf one? There was some blood and stuff in that.
Yeah.
But like this
I
one,
know,
it shows you some disturbing stuff. And among those things, this villain who gets his face scratched off by Rocket in a flashback.
Yeah.
Current version, he's basically got like a RoboCop face. Like it's
That's
a
great way of describing it. Yes, he has this RoboCop face. Exactly.
At the end, there's like a flap hanging off, which I remember watching the movie. I'm like, I was just fixated on like that. It's just like flapping around, and I thought that was meant to be kind of just like a funny joke, but no, it's literally it's a Chekhov's gun. Like no, that flap is going to go somewhere because at the end of that whole big action sequence. And this is the funny part. They don't have to do it. They've already won. They've defeated him. But I guess, like, who is it? Is it Quill who just decides, like, he sees it and he's like, he's got to pull it.
Got to do the Scooby-Doo thing.
And then, like, he's lying on the floor and, like, he's got...
He's just absolutely mangled.
It's just...
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just flesh. It's red.
Yep.
It's horrifying. But yeah, he's an amazing villain, and you see, and the actor just gives it his all. Which
Yes.
again, as we've mentioned, Gunn just knows how to get the best out of everybody. Even the most trivial supporting role, dude. I will
Yes.
remember Carrot Man for
Yes.
the rest of my life in this movie. I don't even remember the names of all the Eternals,
Right.
but I will
You
remember
know,
Carrot Man for the
yes.
rest of my. He's on screen for 3 seconds.
Exactly. Exactly, dude. That's exactly right. No doubt about it. You're so right.
A bunch of people spent God knows how many hours crafting that makeup.
Yep.
And then they got an actor who, and this probably took like 5 to 8 hours, right? Get all this stuff on him. And then like he's on screen and he's like, and we see him wipe his brow and go, whew, and that's it. But it was worth
Right.
it.
Exactly.
That
exactly.
man,
Absolutely
whoever was
worth
in that suit, that guy's going to be at conventions like 10,
Yeah.
20 years from now.
He's the
With
carrot
a
guy.
picture
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
Carrot
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. No doubt, man. But you're right. Exactly. It's James Gunn can bring out the best in the people that he works with.
Yeah.
And like it's not like a low budget, like, you know, it's not like a low budget movie, right? And I just want people to know what I'm saying when I convey just the scope of what he can do. This is a big production, high budget studio work. There's hundreds of people under him that he has to direct. Of course he has a crew.
And
He
he's
needs to have a
writing.
crew. And he's writing and he's directing. But the very fact that there's some kind of syncretism, this harmony that he can do to produce this work, and just sail the ship of like hundreds and hundreds of people behind him to do it well. This is what makes him an auteur.
Right.
I think it's just there was a lot of people that people expected that they would do the same thing. They could do the same thing and they couldn't. They didn't want to. James Gunn has that quality about him just to make things work, and more power to him. And like I was confident that Superman's going to be good under James Gunn's vision. I can't wait. I'm more than confident now. I can't wait to see Superman now. You know what I'm saying? Just because of what we saw in this trilogy.
I gotta say, I was super interested to see how James Gunn would approach Superman, knowing that he turned it down 1st.
That's true. That's right. You brought that up.
He thought he couldn't do it, which I thought was interesting. And then after that, he goes and makes like a show about this C-list character just because he thought it was cool, I guess, which was super interesting. And then he started writing Superman Legacy, but still didn't want to direct it. And then finally has decided he's going to direct it after deciding that, okay, maybe he can make it work. So I'm interested to see what it is, like what he comes up with. Like I'm interested to learn what it was that convinced him that he could direct this himself. But also knowing that, he's drawing from stuff like All-Star Superman. Comparing that to what like we see in this movie with Adam Warlock, who isn't as big a role as I thought, but still again makes, just like Carrot Man, right? Like even relatively minor roles, like they just feel so distinctive.
Absolutely.
Every line said by every character in this movie could only be said by that character. It wouldn't work coming from any other. Like that, I don't know if that's really the case for like any other Marvel movie, which tend to feel a bit more blah and generic. Right? Feels like every single line was carefully crafted for just that actor to say as that character in that moment, And to see how James Gunn kind of shoots Adam Warlock in the way that he like uses his abilities, like it feels like we're getting just a little tiny preview of like how Superman might work on screen.
I think you're right. I think so without opening up another can of worms about this, but Adam Warlock, like it's almost as if you're right. Like at first, in my first understanding of the character, right? Like, and let me just say, I don't know too much about the character. You gave me a synopsis of him, but like, I just knew him from the Infinity War comic. That was it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know anything else about him.
It doesn't. This comic book stuff is so complicated and weird, and it doesn't matter because this is a very different version of him anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But that to say, like, I thought he was a throwaway character for like the first third of the movie, but then in the last final is like, oh, okay, this is actually very good, especially what you mentioned today about the theme of empathy,
Right.
where like he it's not that he earned it, but like he understood empathy through just dealing with the Guardians, because ultimately he was a he was an antagonist figure to the Guardians, and who gives who gives him a second chance? The freaking Guardians. And I was just like, and like in that moment, it's just like, why are you doing this for me? You know what I'm saying? And then Drax tells him, every person deserves a, or Groot tells translated, everyone deserves a second chance. And I was just like, that's it. And that's where he becomes a guardian of the galaxy from then on. And you just can tell the development from that character in just a short amount of time, you know? And so it's just like,
Well, they do so much by just giving him a dog.
Yeah,
or
that's
whatever,
right.
whatever the hell that thing is, a space dog, an alien space dog.
Right.
And from that point on, it's like he's because what is he's like a year old or something?
Yeah,
technically,
that was the thing too.
They mentioned they pull him out of the cocoon early, so he's not baked yet.
He's
like
the
he's not done.
half-baked warlock. That's right.
And they give him like an alien space dog, and it's a boy and his dog, and you can see, like, especially when they kill his mom, whatever. I don't know exactly what's going on there, but
how that's like, yeah, exactly.
But like, yeah, like they take a character who's just like essentially a battering ram, and then they like, you know, through these little moments, like they sort of develop like this sense of, oh yeah, like he starts to understand, like, hey, maybe what he's doing hurts people, because he doesn't understand what he's doing.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. He's a child, right? He's an infant in his mind, right? And just then you realize, oh, okay. And I was just like, oh, there we go. And then
I don't feel good about this.
No,
I think he actually says that.
Is that what I do to people?
Yeah.
So yeah. But all to say, I think I'm happy that James Gunn did what he did. I'm happy that James Gunn was able to complete what he wanted to complete, and he provided something so refreshing for me, and I'm so happy that he did it, and I just can't wait to see what he does with Superman. It's absolutely
yeah. So closing thoughts. I thought this was great. I would actually go back and rewatch these movies, and I've never done that for a Marvel movie. I'm not especially a Marvel fan. I've seen most of them. I like comic books and stuff, so like I see them, but like they're fine. But these are like, they're actually good movies. Like they're like, you don't have to like the MCU to like these movies.
Right.
And this third one feels like genuinely like, no, this is like a very unique and distinctive experience. And I don't know what, again, it's like you give Troma $250 million, this is what you get. I can't think of any other movie that goes this hard on that, right? Like, I remember thinking when I watched the first one that it felt like watching The Fifth Element, but for the whole family, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point.
Yeah, and this one just goes way beyond where The Fifth Element went. This is the most absurd, insane, space, fantastical, heavy metal European comic madness. Toxic Avengers stuff. Like, it's crazy. And it's a great movie. I'm excited to see what happens with DC. I'm excited to see what Gunn can do with a character like Superman.
Yep.
I've heard some people mention like Gunn's whole thing doesn't seem like a good fit for Superman, but I suspect that's mostly because most people know Superman from the movies.
Right.
Have not been the best representation of the character. And if you just go back and read some comics, I mean, this is a guy who fights Brainiac, Parasite. There's literally a character named Bizarro Superman from the Bizarro planet.
Right.
Oh man, I would love to see James Gunn's take on Bizarro, like, and Mr. Mixel-Spitlick, and like,
oh my god,
oh man, I would love to see that. So yeah, I'm excited to see him bring some of that, classic Silver Age, energy back to Superman, right? With a little bit of his own sort of like, a little bit of his own style. Mm-hmm. And I think the last thing I would say, and not to end things on too much of a negative note, but this movie felt very conclusive. Not just in the sense that like it's an end to like the Guardians trilogy, but like, man, I don't know that any MCU movie will be as good as this from here. I don't know. They'll need to find another singular talent like James Gunn, if they're going to pull that off again. And I don't know
Yeah.
who that's going to be,
Right.
or if the studio has what it takes at this point to do that. And walking out of this movie, really did feel like this was the end of an era, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, because yeah, I remember when that first Iron Man movie came out, and it kicked off like this whole thing, and for a decade, it was like a ritual of going to see like the latest Marvel movie every summer, and how it built up to, Avengers, and then like the next event, and it was a thing. And after the Infinity War stuff, they haven't really been able to keep that momentum up. And watching this now, I'm like, man, it really has been like 10 years since that first one. Mm-hmm. And there's a sense of maturity about this movie. And this is essentially a movie about learning to let go of things so that you can approach the next phase of your life, right? So at the end of this movie, nobody dies, right? They save Rocket, Gamora's back. Yay, like they've all teamed up again. Well, no. Like they everyone lives, but then they decide that the Guardians are over anyway because it's time. And it's hard for me not to think that there's something of Gunn himself, like when he's writing the character of Gamora, who has come back for one last, mission. And she kind of like, she softens on Quill and on the team. And we see the old Gamora sort of show through, but she still doesn't stick around, and she goes back to the Ravagers. And again, Gunn very explicitly shows her being happy with this new family that she's found. Right? He's not trying to like
shoot, talk about meta, bro.
Yeah, and I'm like, I was like, I feel like there's something of Gunn himself in that, where he's like, look, he loved the Guardians, and they gave him his career, and they did all this stuff, but if you try to cling to stuff sometimes, even if it's good, it can turn sour. And sometimes you do just have to move on to the next thing. Because if you do that, you can't accept what might come next.
Right.
And there is kind of this like subtle message at the end of like, like Quill needs to go off and do his thing, and Mantis needs to go off and do her thing, and like
need to resolve things, right?
Yeah, they need to figure out what's next, and they can't just stay in the same place forever. And so I think I think Gunn is kind of like, that's kind of where his head's at. That's probably why that theme is showing through. And for me personally, I'm like, I might go see more Marvel movies in the future, but it does feel like there is this era of like superhero hype and Marvel films and stuff that was like kind of a fun era to be in, and it's over now, and that's okay.
Yeah. That might just be the inevitable, that might, no, not inevitable. Yeah, it has to be okay. It has to be okay, right? Yeah. Because that is maturity. That is, and I think going back to whole superhero fatigue, we talked about it earlier in this episode about like, maybe it's not superheroes, the content in it of itself, but it's just the Marvelization, the MCU, like the production formula of it that's starting to get the fatigue. And I think you nailed it. And this will be my final words. You nailed it. Just like you have to see that things happen and they progress. They have to move on, and you have to accept that. I don't think we see the MCU production crew, like the big wigs, up top. I don't think they want to do that. I think they just still want to remain immature.
They've got valuable children. IP, and they want to maintain it. They rather not risk having to start over. And
what I'm saying? Exactly. And and you know what? So the Phase 4 could have been a daunting task, because after Infinity War, it could have been a daunting task. It could have been an intimidating task. And I think majority of the movies that we see have faltered or wavered from the intimidation, because it's like, I think there was just this outcry from mob fans. It's just like, oh, what are they going to do next? What are they going to do next? What are they going to do next? And it's just like, guys, give us time to figure this out, right? And like, they didn't want to say that, but like, it's just, the reality of it is like, maybe they had no idea. You know what I'm saying? They had to still figure things out, right? And what we see in the Phase 4 is just like, it's just all these things that are supposed to hype up for something bigger, something badder down 5, 6, 7 years down the road. And that's really unfortunate. That's really unfortunate, where maybe the reality could have been that in this Phase 4, you could have just, I think it was you that told me this, that like basically the way that MCU does it is like the story revolves around the special effects, like to a point where like, a director.
They start pre-production on like a lot of the big set pieces and stuff. Even sometimes even before they have a director, and there's like a whole second unit or whatever that handles that stuff.
Right.
And I think you really see it in some movies like Black Widow, where there's a director who's brought on and they film this people standing around talking scenes while there's this whole other operation happening, setting up all the special effects and the action scenes and stuff. Yeah.
That must be really suffocating for a creative.
Yeah.
Like I wonder if that was what all the other directors felt. I mean, like, and like going back to the other pretty decent movie in Phase 4, which was Multiverse of Madness, right? Sam Raimi took the helm of it, but you could tell
it was Sam Raimi.
Yeah, there was aspects of Sam Raimi, but then you could tell there was aspects of the production kind of filtering in, right? But anyways, all to say, like, we had the benefit of Guardians Volume 3, James Gunn being his last movie, and I bet he talked to Feige and he says, no one from the head up, no one is intervening in this story. This is my story. I'm going to do whatever I want with it, and that's it. And Feige's like, yeah, okay, all right. And that's what we got.
I doubt he even had to do that. I have a strong suspicion that Feige and a lot of other people are happy to just let him do what he wants because he's been so reliable.
Sure.
Sure. And, it's like they would rather keep that relationship and build it, and they have no interest. Like, I don't think it's funny. There's always like people on the internet talking about like basically framing this like it's a wrestling match or something, or like this person versus this person. Like, no, dude, come on. They're literally they're coworkers in an office. That's what this is.
Okay.
Like, it might be it's a really nice office. It's it's in Burbank or Beverly Hills or whatever, but like it's still just it's a white collar job, right? But I do suspect that Gunn has probably earned himself a ton of clout. And if he delivers on Superman, he will be the king of Hollywood, right? At that point. Yep. I think to go back to like what I was kind of saying about like it's an end of things. Like, that's kind of maybe that's what we need. Like the era of the MCU is over. Mm-hmm. Even if they recover from like this period of like meh quality.
Right.
They're never going to own Hollywood again as long as like if the whole DCU thing with Gunn works out, then there's going to be the DC thing, and there's a lot of people who like DC and probably watched a lot more Marvel stuff just because it's what was there.
Exactly.
And also Hollywood's probably going to try to make more video game movies after Mario. The point is that the MCU is not going to own Hollywood anymore. There was like 15 years almost where like literally the MCU was the center of big budget Hollywood production, and I think that's over, right? And they could get good again, but they're never just going to have it all themselves the way they did.
There's more in the market. There's more folks in the market, right? And it's because of what Disney did with the MCU, and we should be very grateful for that. We should be very thankful for that. But so I'm as a consumer, I'm excited to see in the horizon the DCU stuff. I wish we saw that simultaneously with the early MCU stuff, but that didn't happen, and I'm okay with that now. Right. And I can't wait for these new DCU stuff. All to say, I hope that as I described it as the glaring mirror for the MCU, I hope they just take a moment and take a deep breath and say, hey, okay, maybe we should follow suit with this, like more story driven and less all about the continuity of the greater arc just to milk the IP. You know what I'm saying? That's and I think it'll be better for it. So
as a consumer, I'm looking forward to having lots of stuff. As someone who likes art, I'm looking forward to somebody like James Gunn having that kind of power to like really direct big budget production and create not just products, but like actual art, because a lot of the MCU is just product, right?
Yeah.
Star Wars even has kind of turned into like an IP machine, right? Just we got to generate consistent stream of quality IP to properly exploit, our capital. And I'm also looking. I feel like we're in a weird era of. This might be a whole other discussion I have some other time, but I do feel like we're in a weird era of like franchise filmmaking is so thoroughly taken over Hollywood and the way that movies are made. There's now a generation of these filmmakers like Gunn who came of age in that.
Right.
And that's kind of their whole mode of operation.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And so
that's a good
even
point.
people like James Cameron is making in his own independent films, but they're a franchise. He's just making his own franchise.
Right.
With Avatar.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Ryan Johnson, who was an indie director, right, has now just launched his own detective stuff franchise.
Right.
Even
Yep.
even Poker Face, which is technically not part of the Knives Out shows, like he cross promoted by putting the star
Exactly.
in Glass
Natasha
Onion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like he's running his own detective mystery franchise over there, right? Like,
Right.
I feel like every John Wick, right? Chad Stahelski and Keanu Reeves, like they didn't just make a movie and some sequels; they've started a franchise, right?
Yeah. We have a prequel coming up, Continental, right? So
yeah. So I'm interested to see. I don't think franchises are a bad thing. I think what's interesting is you could have real creatives, really flexing their muscles and doing what they love.
Exactly.
And I'm interested to see how that plays out for Gunn and for Hollywood as a whole. And hopefully that's the direction things will continue to go. So I have positive feelings for Hollywood as a whole, regardless of what happens with the MCU. I think the next 10 to 20 years, right, of like Hollywood production could be super interesting, more so than it's been in a long time.
Right on. Well said. I think that was a great way to end it. We guys, thank you so much just to listen to us, just talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, what we thought about it. We hope you enjoyed it. What is it? How does it go? Okay, you don't have to go home, but you get the hell out of here. But thanks, guys.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for any kind of closing thing. I don't have any music ready to go. I didn't realize we were. Yeah. Okay.
No.
This is just going to end really awkwardly then when I just like stop recording.
All right.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna.
Do so.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stop. Okay.